Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 9 of Fitness, Food, and Fun. Today, I am joined by my friend and VP of Strategy at Series Therapeutics in Boston. Will, I'm just going to give a quick intro for you to the people out there to get a little bit of a better idea. And one of the things I talked about with you before we started this was that you're the first person that I brought on in all of the podcasts to talk about the success that you have in the workforce world, but how you're really leveraging a lot of fitness to make that more achievable. Or you can explain to us how you leverage all the hard work that you're doing in the gym. A couple of things that I know about you. So I just explained and talked about your success in the work world, but I have spent the last 4 years or so with you in a CrossFit gym. And that's really a lot of hard work. But on top of that, you've done things that are really dramatic, I'll call them, to say, like a marathon row, which is in fact getting on a rower and rowing for 26 miles. That's something that you've done twice now. I think, to my knowledge, you've done it 2 times. So I want you to tell me a little bit more about your fitness background, because that was pretty quick, and then roll us right into how did you get into fitness in your life?
Sure, Andy. And first, just thank you for having me on. It's nice to catch up and nice to be on here. So my fitness background. So I was not an exceptional athlete growing up by any means. I grew up mostly in Jackson, Mississippi, and Fort Worth, Texas. We're in a suburb called Keller. I played football from 6th grade all the way through until quitting my senior year to focus on academics. I did the powerlifting team for a couple of years. It was a large public high school in Texas. So even at that time, I was about current height, 6 feet, maybe 230, give or take, in high school. I was significantly undersized as a lineman. And so didn't play a lot. Lifted weights and got reasonably strong, but wasn't exceptional by any means. My high school sent multiple people to play in Div 1 or 1AA. So wasn't a competitive athlete, really. Didn't do much athletic in college. Went to a tough engineering school, played rugby for a year, was on indoor track as a thrower for a year and was exceptionally mediocre at it, but it was fun. It was a good break. I really re-engaged with fitness starting my senior year of undergraduate, when I'd gotten quite heavy. I think I was about 305, which is the heaviest I've ever been in my life, and really unhappy with how I looked and how I felt, and decided I would just start jogging again. It was Boston. It was during the winter, so it was cold. So even though I was heavy and really poor shape, if I just started jogging, I wouldn't overheat because it was really cold, because it was January, and sort of rode that out over the rest of my senior year into my first year of graduate school, moving to San Diego, and ended up running a marathon in about 5:07, something like that, 12-minute miles, which I was down to about 2:45 then. It's about the lightest I've been as a grown-up. It was really exciting, and felt the benefits of just feeling better, the kind of self-discipline it takes to kind of work through that kind of consistent running, especially as a larger person. And I think that set the tone for a lot of my fitness over the, frankly, 21 years since then, because that would have been 2000 when I ran the marathon. And so probably 15 of the last 20 years, I've been pretty consistent in going, lifting weights, doing some kinds of cardiovascular work, ran another marathon during that window, had periods where I was on the rowing machine a lot, actually did 100K on the rower once, which took just short of 9 hours. Never do that.
Don't recommend it.
Working out really hard, not always eating terribly well, so my weight yo-yoing a bit. And I think when I found CrossFit after moving to Hartford in 2015 and started going to CrossFit Hartford, I think that gave me much more consistency, much more accountability in terms of having a community, and sort of over the years, I've gotten clearer about having goals and what I want out of my exercise, and sort of what I'm willing to give up athletically to get something else athletically. I think has really served me well, in terms of regaining the endurance I had in my 20s, in terms of getting more flexible and mobile without sacrificing a lot of strength, giving up a little, but that's okay. Rehabbing from pretty significant knee surgery a couple of years ago. It's been a long ride. sitting here at 44 years old, it's kind of odd to think that I probably have 20 years of good athletic training in when I describe myself as a dabbler, not a terribly good athlete growing up, how big of a part of my life it's actually become. So that was a bit all over the place, but maybe I think the context is then helpful to talk about, in addition to the physical conditioning, maybe the benefits to the rest of my life it has had, as you teed up earlier. So a few things that I've tried to plant, plant some seeds for here: focus, discipline, toughness, seeking out coaching. I think all of those have been important for my career, and I think they're important for pretty much anyone's career or however they want to spend the rest of their life. So taking them in a slightly different order, maybe the first is focus or goal setting. Something I've struggled with, I think both in fitness and in parts of my career, it's been difficult for me to make choices on saying, I want to be X. I want to have a career leading a big P&L versus being on the strategy team versus going back and consulting. And when you make that kind of choice to go pursue one thing, it means you're giving up other things. But the truth is you can't do everything. I think David Allen, time management guru, had a saying, you can do anything, but you can't do everything. And I think similarly, you can't do everything in fitness or in your career. You have to make choices based on what's most important to you or interesting to you at that time, and be willing to give up some other things or sort of spend less time on them. And I think that kind of focus has certainly helped in my career and sort of given me the courage to try to seek bigger roles at maybe smaller companies and work in a different way. And it's helped me in my fitness, in recovering from a knee injury 2 years ago, and accepting that in my 40s, it's probably okay to give up 5-10% of my squat strength to have much better range of motion and quality of life and spend more time just building my cardiovascular endurance. Probably better for my long-term health. And so the acknowledgement that we have to make choices and then the willingness to live through those choices has been really important to me, frankly, over the last couple of years, and something that I struggled to do for a long time. Maybe a second is just mental toughness. I mean, I think you heard in there running a marathon weighing 245. The second one I did was a fundraiser. The second one I ran, I probably weighed more like 280 running a New York Marathon, which was among the stupidest things I've ever done for what it's worth. But it took mental toughness. I think the last mile took me almost 30 minutes because I had bruised one of my feet so badly I thought I broke it. And then the other one started to hurt too. And so I was effectively limping the last mile and change. But I wasn't going to not finish. You just find a way. And I think the ability to just grit your teeth and keep going even when it hurts is just a really useful thing in life. And whether that's true physical pain or exhaustion or sometimes boredom or frustration at work, just the ability to put your head down and keep going is quite useful, I think, in any endeavor. I think a third is maybe the role of coaching and the willingness to accept feedback. I think exceptional people or people who want to excel at anything have to be able to humble themselves, find people who know more than them or maybe who know differently from them, and accept feedback, accept coaching, accept their imperfections and work to get better at them. And I think that's hard. And I think as you get more accomplished or further in your career, or as you become a more excellent athlete, I think that's hard. Now, I'd imagine for people who are excellent athletes and are used to people telling them how great they are, maybe it's even harder. But finding people and mentors and coaches who you trust, who have your best interest in mind, and have them look out for you and be willing to tell you what you need to do better and reminding you that you're not perfect it's a useful thing, in both fitness and in life.
Yeah, and one of the things that I neglected to say at the beginning of this is the real purpose of Fitness, Food, and Fun too is to bring people in like you who have accomplished extraordinary things, but to be very relatable to everyone who maybe hasn't accomplished those things, or maybe accomplished one side of what you've done there, maybe on the athletic side, or maybe has not done it on the athletic side, but maybe has done it on the workforce side of things. So what I just heard from you in large part was humility to different roles of your life, and your athletic role and in your work role. But the other thing that I got out of, even from the very beginning of when you first started talking, there's a lot of perseverance that's gone on for you from the high school days all the way till now?
Yeah, no, thank you. That's kind of you to say. Yes, I think perseverance has been an important underlying factor in a lot of things I've done well in life. And it's easy for me to say that, right? I had phenomenal parents, I had a great upbringing, was given opportunities to do whatever I wanted, had the good fortune to go to some really good schools and really benefit from them, and just acknowledge some insane privilege that has played a role in that. And I just want to acknowledge it and be grateful for it, and be grateful for my parents for putting me in those positions. And then at the same time, still to be able to go and work hard and make it through those things. You can be given privilege in good situations and still take a lot of mental, physical, and other toughness to make it through them, right? It's more, I just recognized I was put in a position to be able to have my perseverance and hard work carry me through, where many others maybe never got those opportunities and deserved them and would have succeeded in them. So I don't think that takes away from what I did. It just acknowledges that I think there's sort of a systemic role we play in giving others those chances too. But it has come hard. I did have to work hard. I chose a very hard college intentionally and grinded it out. I 2 years into a 6-year PhD, realized I didn't want to do that for the rest of my career, but I made myself finish because I didn't feel I could look at myself in the mirror if I quit. My family, we finish things. I think the mental toughness from that carried over into athletics, and just the ability to grind out meters on a rower, or grind out miles, or keep showing up at a gym and lifting heavier every week. Like, at some level, toughness begets further toughness. And I think it's a really useful thing. Now, you don't want to do it stupidly. Like, there's probably a good conversation to be had around, if I knew I wanted out 2 years into a 6-year PhD, couldn't I have done something else with those 4 years of my life and gotten further faster and maybe been a little happier? It's a fair question. Is the answer always suck it up and keep driving? Often, actually, no, it's not. But it's good to have it there when you need it.
You brought up your family, and so I'm actually going to wind it back a little bit. And I know this because I know you and I've had a lot of conversations with you, that your brother was actually pretty inspirational for you from an athletic standpoint. I'm going to wind you back to the youth again, just to say, was he part of your inspiration to get into it, or just making a parallel to the two different sides of life that we're talking about here, which is essentially academic and athletic? And can you talk a little how you got into things in the very beginning, even before the high school days, and then a little bit more about how those parallels are, and then we'll move our way into the section.
Awesome. And no, thank you for asking. First, I think, as you know, I couldn't be prouder of my brother Mike. So impressed with what he's done with his life and his career and his athleticism. And so I'm grateful for excuses to be proud of him. It's interesting. So we're 11 months apart. So he's older than me, but less than a year older than me. So, it's not a pure older brother, younger brother dynamic, but it's not twin-like either. It's kind of in between. And I think both he and I are relatively similar body types. Like, I'm at this point, 6'0", 250 maybe. He's 2 inches shorter than me and weighs that and has more muscle on him than I do. He's just freakishly strong. And I say that as a compliment. And so that's kind of always been true. But I think because we are similar in age, similar in build, similar in some aspects of personality, or at least in terms of being competitive, motivated, driven, it was interesting that in our middle school, high school days, we almost intentionally sought to do things differently. He probably tried harder to be more socially popular, and he's more social than I am anyway, but he sought popularity more. And I think he threw himself at athletics harder than I did, versus I threw myself harder at grades and academic competitions and things like that as my way to be different. And sort of we diverged intentionally. And I think over the years since then have converged, and we realize we're much more similar than we are different. So now that we don't have each other as these yardsticks to measure up against every day, we can be ourselves, which is maybe much more similar in interests than we might have appreciated in our teens, which, goodness, 25 or so years ago. I'm sorry. I didn't come back to his inspiration. You hear me tell the stories with fondness and brag about him. I mean, was he an influence? Yes. I mean, there were sports that I kind of stopped playing because he was good at them or I didn't enjoy him as much, like baseball. And I started playing some in middle school, at least because of him. I kind of found rowing. And then as I was finding rowing, he found CrossFit, and I started CrossFit about a year after he did. And then I think he's picked up some cardio stuff and biking after I did. And so there's a bit of inspiring each other. He probably has taken the lead on more things than I have, though. And I don't mind saying that.
Well, it's good to have that person, that force in your life, right? Gives
Yeah.
you a target, and vice versa. Like you said, you give that back to him as well.
Yeah. And frankly, if you believe, I don't know if this is true, right? I can't remember the gentleman's name. It was Tony Robbins' mentor, but it was the idea that you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Right.
And that's super reductive. And I'm sure if you analyzed it, it's not strictly true.
Mhm.
But the idea that you do take on the values of the people you spend time with, and you do learn from them and develop hobbies and interests from them, I think that's absolutely true. And so to have a brother who's that great of an athlete and he's a hand surgeon, so incredibly professionally accomplished, at some level, it sort of raises the bar on what I have to expect from myself because I see what other people with similar background and ability can do. Like it inspires me to try to do a little more.
So now we'll make the transition into the food section. And one thing I want to bring up here, that you've made a pretty strong transformation over the last 6 months or so. Maybe it's been longer, maybe it's been even in closer to a year, but you brought yourself down a ton. And I think my guess is that food is a big lever in that, but you can tell us all the secret to your success.
Yeah, no, it is. First of all, thank you for noticing. Yeah, I'm down 45 pounds from where I was just before COVID. That was a combo of recovering from a knee surgery, and because I didn't have exercise around because I was rehabbing a gimpy knee, I probably ate badly and had a couple IPAs more often than I really should have. I was lugging all that around. And so, at the time I was also, for my previous role, driving to New Jersey every week for probably 3 days a week on average in Jersey, staying in hotels, eating whatever I could get from the grocery store or drive through. And so even though I was exercising hard, I got really heavy because I just ate badly, and you can't out train a bad diet. So being home over Christmas break and the holidays at the end of 19 was this opportunity to start to kind of rethink what I was doing and how I let myself get so heavy despite the fact that I was working out, putting so much into fitness, and if that was really what I wanted, which clearly it was not. And then as the coronavirus hit in that March, and it was clear I wasn't going to be traveling for a long time, I really have to credit my wife, Kristen. We discussed maybe this was the opportunity to rethink some of the bad habits I'd had and some of the decisions I'd made about food, effectively sort of readjust my relationship with it and what I chose to eat and how much I ate, the composition of what I put in my body, the timing I put stuff into my body, and just take advantage of a long period of time where I was going to be home all the time. And I had shouldn't say full control because you always have full control, but a lot easier to maintain and take advantage of that full control by being home and having a fridge and having shelves and not having to be shuttling in and out of places and driving by drive-throughs. It was sort of a reset button. And that, frankly, has been what's done it. Still not perfect. Gained 5 pounds on vacation a couple of weeks ago because, in Maine, the IPAs are delicious and I'm out eating out with my family every day and you want to enjoy these things. And I think that's okay. A year ago, I probably would have freaked out and, gone nuts over it. Now, it's a speed bump. You just take them right back off slowly. It's okay. My relationship with food has been complex over the years. I think I've invested a lot in the fitness part. I've not for a long time really been honest with myself about the food part.
I would say what's really interesting about everything you just summarized is that right now you probably have your best relationship with food, right? That maybe you've
Yeah.
had in your entire life. And you just explained a moment where you bumped up 5 pounds over the weekend and you said no big deal and you get right back on track. But in the past, when you had a bad relationship with food, you would have beat yourself up for it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. No, for sure. I think that relationship is the best it's been. And, I mean, look at our culture, right? If you're like me and you're pretty clean cut and you don't have a lot of bad habits, and food is the most socially acceptable vice, junk food is, beyond the fact that you have to have a significant amount of food to live. And if you exercise even more, too little hurts you one way, too much hurts you another way. And then there are a lot of amazing, cheap, interesting, tasty, bad choices to be made. And so sort of the idea of food as a reward, or food as a way to de-stress, or kind of things I've had to juggle with in a career where I've worked hard and I've had to travel a lot. It's sort of, been a bit of a source of stress relief. And I realized that actually over time, more harm than good. And I've had to find other ways to deal with things. And that's been a lot of the mindset shift over the last year and a half. 5 years from now, we'll see where we are. It's a work in progress, and new high stress job. At some point, the world will, maybe not as much as before, but have people working in person more again and traveling more again. Like, those are going to be challenges, and they're not going to be easy for me. And we'll see how well I do at sort of taking what I've learned with this time mostly at home and apply it. But I have a lot more optimism about the potential to do that than maybe I would have 2 years ago.
That's such an interesting perspective too. And it makes me laugh, but on a serious note as well, to dive into food and use it as a stress reliever. You called it your vice. The one thing I'd like to ask you is, like, do you have a tip for anybody that's out there listening, that what's something that brought you some success, some relief even?
Yeah, a few things. I mean, the first, I've never been able to maintain any sort of consistent healthy eating without consistent tracking, food logging. I mean, there are people who can eat relatively consistently well and stay at a healthy maintenance weight without it. I'm not one of them. Never have been. So just honest, consistent food logging has been a big deal for me. And sort of over time, using that as sort of a way to watch what I'm really doing and understand what good looks like in terms of caloric input, food composition, those kinds of things. And frankly, when I do it, I'm less likely to eat junk because I don't want to have to write it down, because it's a little embarrassing still. It's like, I didn't need to do that. And so you don't want to feel that too deeply and personalize it, but a little bit of that kind of nudges you away from bad choices, and that's okay. So that's probably been the biggest thing, has just been, the consistent food logging. I know there are a bunch of different diet services and others out there for athletes. They'll prescribe macros and breakdowns, and a bunch of them exist, and they're all good. I've used a couple of them over time. I think it's sort of whatever works for you that you'll actually do and be honest about is the best one.
What you said right there is actually really important. And another good note for us and way to be relatable to people is, we're not all playing on the same field here. You just mentioned how for you, you've got to be very strict. Otherwise, this scale starts moving in a direction you don't want it to. Other people can be a little more loose on it. And so what works for you might not work for somebody else, and vice versa. But this also gives me an opportunity to give us sort of a little bit of a capstone in the food section here and say, give us a little bit of your vices here. Give us some of your favorites. What are the things that get you? I know the IPAs. I've heard of that one a couple of times already.
Yeah. I think the beautiful hazy New England IPAs get me, especially being in this part of the country where there's so many good breweries. I don't have to drink bad beer if you don't want to anymore, at least in New England. Sushi kills me. It's good and it's never filling. So I just end up eating way too much. You can always go for a good big piece of meat. And my wife is an incredible baker and dessert maker. Really, it's funny. It wasn't a known gift by any means, but our kids both have significant food allergies or sensitivities that, force us to do a lot more cooking and doing things at home. And so sort of my wife has found that she has this incredible talent, and it's amazing and tasty and I have to be careful because there's always something incredible in our freezer, and I just have to stay away from it most of the time.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I tell my wife all the time, just we don't buy it, we don't bring it home, then we don't eat it. Because if it's there, I'll tell you what, I can only pass it so many times before it ends up in my mouth, and that's a true story.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You see ice cream in there. It's just like, not today. I know you're good. Not today. I'm just going to worry about not today.
So part
Yeah.
three, Will. Part three, fun is the fun section. Tell me a little bit about what you do for fun. What are the things that give you enjoyment? I know you're a pretty big family man, so that's probably a start doing things together with the family. But tell me what else are your favorite hobbies?
Yeah. Am I very fun? Your mileage may vary. What do I do for fun? You're right. Number one on the list is spending time with my wife and kids. And, my daughters are 13 and 10 and still at an age where they enjoy spending time with me. They don't hate me. I'm not lame yet. So
Get close.
just praying for more of that time. So, spending time with them. I make a point of my daughters are taking striking and jujitsu. And so I try to take them to class when I'm in town as much as I can. And, I'll occasionally go take an adult jujitsu class myself just to better understand what they're doing so I can talk to them and sort of stay close to them on it. Watching movies, reading, because they take MMA, they now like watching that, or watching wrestling, which I love more than I probably should, but it is one of my very favorite things.
I know.
Yeah, I do have the WWE title as my weightlifting belt. Not subtle.
Hey,
And,
WWE and wrestling of all forms has been around for I don't even know how long now. So there's quite a few people watching right next to you, filling.
yeah, and you watch shows like it's everywhere in the world. Like you have not just in Mexico and Japan and places with sort of a massive mainstream wrestling culture, but like you go to different parts of Africa and where sort of different tribal behaviors or rituals over time have almost become effectively localized pro wrestling. Like it's in like the Andes, it's in, I can't remember which, Vice had a series of documentaries about, but there are a couple of African countries that have this kind of thing. Like it's if the three original sports are you run, you swim, or you fight, by that logic, wrestling's been around forever. What else do I do? I read a ton. I read a lot of sci-fi. I read a lot of business stuff. I'm Catholic, so I try to read some religious stuff on occasion to kind of try to keep myself whole and just make sure I put time with my wife and my kids doing nothing, just sitting and talking to them or just being around them. That might sort of refill the gas tank more than anything.
Let's say you had a couple days, 2 to 3 days, do whatever you want, or take a vacation. What would you be doing? Are you going with the family somewhere? Are you running a marathon? Are you hitting the CrossFit gym? What are we going to be doing? Or are you just going to sit down and read a book, or could it be any combination of things that you just ran through? I'd like to hear your ultimate, like, what's your nirvana?
Yeah. I mean, like I think about family, like what would I do with a family vacation? The only problem is these things aren't all geographically the same place, right? I'd want to take the kids to Disney for a couple of days while we're all still old enough to enjoy it together. I would ideally want to try to get a workout in on all those days. If I could drop them off with someone for a day or two, take my wife to Vegas or something Vegas-like, go see a show or two, eat some good meals, and then while she sleeps, go gamble.
Yeah, I'd tell you, like, I didn't realize I would be like a show person. It's been years that I've been into it now, and it started the first time I had gone to Vegas. And the people are so talented. You're blown away by seeing them do it in person. Like, this is so fascinating. You can't wait to see another one.
Yeah, it's crazy because my early experiences having gone to Vegas, I went to grad school in Southern California. So you get a bunch of broke guys and have 8 guys, and you'd get 1 or 2 hotel rooms, maybe on the old strip, so it was cheaper, and just go, in my case, I just go play, limit hold'em or low dollar, no limit hold'em, or go play craps or something. I didn't have any money, so I really couldn't afford to lose much. It's just the experience of being there with your friends and drinking cheap drinks and playing cards or whatever game you like to play. So that's how I always think of Vegas. And so now that Vegas has become this place where I think they've said they actually make more money on the clubs and dining than they do on the gambling at this point. It's just mind blowing to me because that's not what I remember at all. But, it is this kind of turned into this interesting destination for everybody. I've only been once the last few years there and was there for work, so I didn't get to see any shows, but it looked amazing. God willing, it's a point it's safe for everybody to travel and go back and congregate on the strip. I'd love to be back there at some point soon and see it.
I mean, to your point, that's what all the boulevards are when you're driving in on the highway. All the things you're seeing, it's show this show, the show, that show.
Yeah.
It's got to be for a reason. It's got to be a revenue driver. But the final piece, the capstone here, if you will, fitness, food, and fun. How are those elements in your life? Are these things separate? Do they interweave? What's your perspective on how fitness, food, and fun are in your life?
Yeah, for sure. I think they're all fun in and of themselves, right? I just enjoy working out. It's just a fun way to spend time and, enjoy moving your body, seeing people. Cooking is fun, eating is fun. Fun by definition is fun. But, I think they're definitely connected, right? You need to eat in such a way that fuels your body the right way and you feel good so you can go be fit. And so you feel good so you can go do fun things. Like if you eat like garbage, you feel like garbage. It's hard to go do fun things when you feel terrible. And so I do think they're all pretty well connected. And then occasionally eating something terrible for you is also pretty fun, just not all the time.
Gotta have its limits, right?
Even moderation has to be moderated sometimes.
Yeah. I completely agree. So I just want to say, Will, thank you for joining me, especially because I know you just took a new position at a new company and it's a very busy time for you getting integrated into the company. So thank you for taking time out of your day to join me. And I think you brought a lot of interesting and unique perspectives into this conversation, especially because this one was a little bit different than the past conversations from the angle that we were taking.
Awesome. No, thank you, Andy. I appreciate the invite. I was happy to do it. Always happy to talk. I enjoy things like this because I don't think you often get the opportunity to sort of step back and talk about your journey and sort of yourself and who you are and what you've done. And so I think sometimes you come away with new things to go think about or spend time on that you wouldn't have done otherwise. So selfishly, I've got a lot out of it and I thank you for that.
Well, I actually love hearing you say that. So again, thank you. That's it, everybody. Thank you for listening all the way through.
Thanks, everybody.